Davison. It's time for our monthly show again. It's Let's Talk Menopause with the Menopause Experts Club. So a huge welcome for joining us tonight. And this month we have a focus which Alison came up with this idea actually. So thank you very much. The gift of menopause. Can you see it as a gift? Can you see it having a silver lining? And what are the upsides of this phase of life? So how can reconnecting our bodies and ourselves be a blessing? Can it be a blessing in disguise? And how can we really ensure that we take this time to focus on self-care going forward? So we have a Dr. Allie Grimston, award-winning GP and functional medicine doctor, specialising in perimenopause and women's hormone balance. So she'll be talking to us tonight about the dreaded atopic vaginitis and what to do about it, when to go to your doctor, and how to make things a little bit more comfortable. So myself, Livia Francis, I've been in health and fitness 31 years. I'm an award-winning athlete for 9 years. I'm specialising in exercise and food choices for women in midlife. And I'll be sharing some easy exercises that don't induce what's called oxidative stress. And this is from an extensive repertoire of menopause lifestyle activities for women, which I absolutely believe in and love, and I've done them myself. And it's all about educating about exercise. There's lots of little tricks that you can put into your daily schedule that will have a huge effect on your lifestyle and your menopause. Sally isn't with us tonight, which is unfortunate. She's a little bit ill. She's a clinical hypnotherapist and a perimenopause coach. She's the founder of Inspiring Talks of Brighton, and also the Menopause Mindset podcast. So go and listen to that. Now we have our special guest tonight. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Sarah's the founder of Thrive Homeopathy. Sarah is a natural menopause wellbeing expert. She uses homeopathy, coaching and education in all aspects of menopause self-care to help clients escape menopause misery. I like that terminology, but without, and this is fantastic, without synthetic hormones. So Sarah will talk about the gifts of menopause and explain homeopathy to us, which I'm really looking forward to, and also how it can help a broad range of menopause and perimenopause symptoms. So we've all put this night together because we've been on the journey ourselves or have been educated about it, and we're super passionate about helping other women, breaking the taboo, and really showing women what they can do, how they can help themselves through this glorious goddess phase of life. So Alison, would you like to lead tonight?
Yeah, that would be lovely. Hi there, everybody. So I'm Dr. Allie. This is just the intro, and then we'll do a longer little bit afterwards. So my background is I grew up on a farm, always been connected to nature and the environment. And when I went through medical school and discovered how we were putting chemicals into our systems, and our systems cannot process these, and they were going into the environment, and a lot of these were causing problems with sort of fish changing sex and things like that. I realized I wanted a more holistic approach to managing health myself. I also broke my back when I was 17, which was the start of my real journey. I had 25 years of chronic back pain, and the way I managed that was embracing, realizing quite rapidly that the pharmaceuticals that the doctor was giving me were doing nothing. Well, they weren't really helping the pain enough, and they were giving me side effects. So I couldn't concentrate on all of the facts that I had to learn at medical school. And so that's what started me on the journey of a holistic doctor. I came out of medical school with a passion for endocrinology, which is hormone balance, and gynecology, which is women's health. But I couldn't become a specialist in our medical terms in the National Health Service, because my back was too bad to be able to withstand that level of training. So I trained as a GP, and then through my own experience of hormone imbalance, took off a little channel. So I burnt out when I was about 38, And that was really the start of perimenopause or premenopause for me. So it can be more than 10 years in advance that you start to experience symptoms. So I burnt out, which was partly adrenal fatigue, which I'd never heard of. And then in 2016, I developed an underactive thyroid in keeping with my family history. This year I got insulin resistance, which is also in keeping with my family history, and perimenopause. So these are the 4 main hormone imbalances that I teach people how to manage in my year-long program for perimenopausal women in their 40s, 50s and 60s. And I, along the way, I trained as an energy healer. I trained in acupuncture, and I trained in bioidentical hormone therapy, which is natural as we can get with the actual hormones. So the hormone creams that I use in the bioidentical hormone therapy, these here, so you can't see, there you go, you can see there. The hormone creams and gels that I use are based on yam, but adjusted to make them exactly the same as the chemicals that we lose when we go through perimenopause. So I help women to rebalance their hormones and reconnect with their soul. So my aim is for people to take back ownership of their health, so they're no longer beholden to the doctor, they're no longer doing as the doctor says, but they've got a real say and having a partnership in their healthcare. That's me.
Okay, so Sarah, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please? Thank you.
Yes, sure. So I'm a professional homeopath, but this is my 3rd career. So I came to it via a rather long, circuitous route of I graduated in Russian in pre kind of Iron Curtain coming down, and took my languages into sales. I didn't really know what else to do with them. I did that for 7 years. Then I moved into, went back to college, did another degree in psychology. And about this time I'd started to meet homeopathy, and I had kind of, I would go and see a homeopath and get great results, and then kind of leave it. And then I always had my kit with me, and I was always kind of reading books about it. But it never even occurred to me at that stage that I would ever want to be a homeopath, because I was in business. And so I went from there into a 15-year career as an corporate innovation consultant, working with the big blue chips. And it was in my early 40s, when I had just had a child at 41, and I was super stressed with the career and the child, that when I really hit perimenopause big time, and had no idea what was going on. I mean, I hadn't even heard of the term perimenopause, and I was, very close to burnout, which is what often happens in perimenopause, because the adrenals are under stress trying to produce the sex hormones when the ovaries wind down. But I know that now. I didn't know that then. I just thought, so I have a passion for educating women and waking women up about what perimenopause is and the fact that it exists, because I think a lot of women out there are like, don't want to know, I don't want to know, don't tell me menopause, that's not me, I'm too young. And because of that lack of knowledge, they suffer a lot, and I did too. But it was at that point that I thought, okay, I need to go back to my homeopath. So I went back to my homeopath, and the results were so amazing that I thought, I need to do this as a career. So I basically took my passion and made it into a profession. And now, as I have gone through perimenopause and through my menopause, have seen the results both for myself with my own homeopath, because I see my own homeopath still, and also have attracted, as you do as a therapist, you attract people like you. I've attracted a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women. So I made it into a speciality. And I call myself the coaching homeopath as well as the natural menopause expert, because I have a background also in coaching and NLP and stuff like that from my corporate work. So I marry them all together, and I have a program called the Natural Menopause Transformation Program, where women get 6 months of individual treatment with me, but are also part of a group for both sharing, but also for being educated in all other aspects of self-care around exercise. I don't go into probably the kind of thing that you do, Livia, but I take people kind of menopause, yoga for menopause, qigong for menopause, education about relationships, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. So that's me.
Yeah, really interesting. It's funny, isn't it? I just said in the chat how our experiences in life has led us down certain pathways, and my experience was pretty horrendous actually. I've been in health and fitness, as I said, for a long time, and I always thought that being fit and healthy would enable me to cope with pretty much anything. And however, Wonder Woman was drawn to a halt when menopause knocked her sideways, and I couldn't quite believe what was happening. So my energy went. I had a lot of brain fog. I didn't necessarily put on weight, but I had the hot flushes, I had anxiety, I couldn't sleep. So it was an accumulation of symptoms that gradually happened over a period of months. And my first port of call was really 8 years ago, was the GP. Trusted my GP. I thought he'd be able to sort it out in a second. I thought, well, maybe I'm just a little bit under the weather. And I remember him specifically saying, well, you just need some antidepressants. You're obviously stressed. And, stress is a natural thing. We all take on a lot in our lives. And I agree, I was probably stressed. I was going through a divorce, partly due to the moodiness of everything, not understanding what was going on, and not wanting to have sex anymore because it was uncomfortable. And that's often not talked about either. And I remember feeling really helpless, and the antidepressants, it just put me off at the time. And I thought, why can he not see I'm not depressed? I'm just not able to cope. And I remember I struggled. I didn't know what the matter was. I thought, well, I'll clean up my diet. I came off the alcohol because that made the intensity of the hot sweats worse. I worked that one out. Took down the coffee. Never really been into a lot of saturated fats or anything. And I remember going back and demanding to have some blood tests. And once the blood tests were done, hey ho, I was in full blown menopause. And from there on in, I spent 2 years adapting my diet, looking at what I was doing. I kept a food diary, which is really helpful. I don't know if any of you on here have done that, noting when you have certain foods, what the symptoms may be. That was so helpful and such a simple thing to do. I took the supplements, I looked online, I researched as much as I could. At the moment, just to be really open, I am on HRT because it got to the point where I really couldn't cope. I find it works for me, but I know there are lots of other routes down there. And eventually that's what I'll be looking at too, starting to come off it and going on to something that's a little bit nicer on the body, more natural. I like that word, natural. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and why I'm passionate about what I do. So I have a 90-day program specifically for menopause. It's an online portal. Really, I was due to go online in December, but it got brought forward to March. Things changed, businesses changed, face-to-face has changed a lot. Zoom has been an absolute godsend for me as a fitness instructor and personal trainer. However, the Menopause Lifestyle Solution deals with an online portal only, and women seem to be open to that now. So do check it out. It's a 90-day plan. Love it. I've put my heart and soul into it. Okay, Alison, would you like to start?
Lovely. So today I'm actually not talking about atrophic vaginitis because that was what I dealt with last week. So that was my mistake, sharing the wrong information for Livia when she was starting. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we can find as a blessing about the menopause and what we're going through. So yeah, there are all these awful symptoms, and menopause isn't a disease. It isn't an illness. It's just a phase in life. And although 70% of women do experience some symptoms going through perimenopause, it's not necessary. You don't need to. And although hot flashes and raging hormones, mood swings, insomnia, and the lack of libido and the painful intercourse and all of those things are difficult, they're not essential. Not everybody experiences that. And eating the right things and taking the right exercise and managing your mindset can make an enormous difference to that. So yes, menopause is a rite of passage that we all go through between the ages, usually of between 45 and 55. But what are the silver linings in this cloud? Well, one idea that I had is that it's actually a great opportunity to get in touch with your body. So there are a lot of these physiological changes going on in your body. Much of that is hormonal and related to a decline of estrogen and progesterone in the body. Progesterone, not progestogen, which is what is in pharmaceutical HRT. And that in itself isn't a negative occurrence. It's just a change. It's a change that can be a blessing in disguise. Since menopause will alter the way you perceive your body and cause physical changes, that's an opportunity to assess your physical health. And what we realize is that as we get older, we are less, our bodies are less resilient, if you like. As we get older, we are less able to deal with things like chemicals, pollution, the things that we put on and in our body, junk food. These things are less, our bodies are less able to deal with them as we get older. And so I recommend that you really take this opportunity to clean up what you eat, clean up how you live your life. You can reassess your exercise, and Livia is going to go into that as well. And so she's going to cover that side of things. But it gives you an opportunity to get in touch with what you really want. Think of some new physical challenges, such as maybe a dance class or yoga or even paddleboarding. Your body is shedding the old and allowing in the new, and you can be ready for it. And this is just an opportunity to get back in touch, and get back in touch with what you want to do for this second half of your life. So what I'm passionate about is helping women to embrace this second half of life, when very often the kids are leaving home. My daughter's starting university in September. Our kids are leaving home. Yeah, there may be problems with our older generation. So for previous generations of women at this age, often their parents weren't still around, but my mother and father and stepmother are all at a stage in life when they are creating demands on my time. But it's an opportunity to connect with them as well. You know, it's an opportunity to get closer to people. But really, I think more than anything, it's a time when you can reassess what's gone, reassess the beauty of what's gone, and what has really, what you've learned from the first half of your life. Those lessons, every experience has a silver lining. So like my car accident when I was 17, without that, I would never have really learned about how important and even essential complementary therapies and a spiritual approach are to health. And I would never have reached the stage of being here, of prescribing bioidentical hormones, of being a functional medicine doctor. All of those things are a direct result of the train of events that followed from that car crash. So you can look back on your past and see what amazing results came from that, and all the opportunities that arose. I would never have trained as an animal healer and equine healer if it wasn't for all of that and the burnout. The burnout was what led to me training as an energy healer. So another pointer is that the end is in sight for your menstrual cycle. So no periods, you don't need to spend money on feminine hygiene products, although I recommend, wherever possible, thinking of the environment, that we should be using a moon cup or something equivalent as much as possible as we go through this phase. We have more ease with touching our bodies. If we can do that and reduce the tampons and towels that get into the landfill sites, that's a great thing. That aside, so it's a time in life when you can spend more time on you. So in addition to all those physical changes, it's a new time in your life emotionally and socially. Your kids may be out of your hair, they may be starting their own lives. But what I also notice about my son who's 23 and my daughter who's 19, they actually appreciate me so much more now than they did before. They appreciate what I and my husband have done for them. And they are beginning to really see how many choices you made in their favour in your life up to now as well. So that's really interesting. If you've been working in the same career for years, now's the time to take a look at what makes you really happy. You might want to change direction completely like Sarah Davison did, or you might want to tweak it slightly like I have. I'm still a GP 2 days a week, but the rest of the week I have my online courses in menopause and my functional medicine clinic in Haywards Heath. So I have this different way of working that really fulfills my heart so much more than before. So is there a country you've always wanted to travel to? Do you want to take a drawing or journaling class? So there's so many things that you get a chance to do. And if you do things like evening classes, like my mum, I remember when she was at this phase, she went to evening classes and met loads more people by going to pottery classes and things that led to her having new friendships and a new community. And that's something where we can really take advantage of the online opportunities to build community as well. So these changes can lead to enriching new support systems. So despite the fact that menopause is a natural and normal part of a woman's life, it's challenging and it's new. And experiencing something so new offers an unexpected perk. It allows you to make connections with others that you wouldn't otherwise have made. People get closer to other people, not just by appearing brilliant all the time and only showing the sunny side of life, but by actually asking for help and showing vulnerability. And that's something that I learned early on in my professional speaking career, that you can get your audience on side, you can get your community on side by sharing some vulnerability as well as your expertise. And so I've shared about the experience of breaking my back, for example. But when you ask for help, you give others the opportunity to help you, and you also give others the opportunity to ask for help themselves, which then enables them to get help and advice that they wouldn't otherwise have got as well. So there's so many opportunities here to see the blessing in menopause. So it can be symptom free, it can be comfortable, it can be totally natural, and you may need bioidentical hormone therapy or even HRT. You may not, but there are other ways, and using this whole approach, this holistic approach that I use, is key when you are dealing with perimenopause and menopause. So I have my online course I'm relaunching in September, so watch out for that in your emails. I think you're still muted.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you, Alison. I did put some comments in the chat box. At the bottom of your screens, you will see a chat box. So if you have any questions, you just take your cursor along the bottom where it says chat. If you pop some questions in there for later, because we will open it up, and that will help guide us to your needs, really, as to what the curiosity that you have around what Alison was saying and what Sarah may say, or myself. So Sarah, I would like you to speak. I'm really excited to hear what you're saying.
Okay, so I've got a slide presentation. I'll just find it. Just move things around here. And we'll go in there. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the hidden gift of menopause. So I will be echoing quite a lot of the things that Alison has said. I'm just writing down the time because I know I've got half an hour, but just set a timer on myself because otherwise I can get a bit carried away. Okay, there we go. So yeah, and within my talk, I'm going to be talking about how to escape menopause misery without synthetic hormones, but within the context of it being a hidden gift. So I put together this slide, not realizing I would be asked to introduce myself. So that's just a kind of a quick bullet point on my history. And I guess what I didn't say in my introduction was, but it would be good to say now, is that, you know, the first time I realized that there was a gift in menopause, and when I went through those really difficult perimenopause symptoms, which I didn't talk about, but, you know, I was basically losing the plot at work. I couldn't think straight. I was forgetting things. I was dropping the ball professionally. I had no energy, you know, weak as a kitten, constant infections, didn't know what was wrong. But that all led me to become a homeopath. And I've never been happy in a career than when I've done this. I absolutely love it. And sometimes you just have to shut me up a bit. So yeah, I went through the languages of sales, the psychology, the corporate innovation consultant, and then did the degree in homeopathy. and here I am. So let's just then go into the talk proper. So before I go into talking about the gifts, I don't want this to sound like a Pollyanna presentation, like, oh, everything's wonderful, because it's challenging, menopause. So I'm just going to do literally a couple of slides on that, just for us to kind of take in the challenge. Here's the first challenge: 49 possible symptoms. You know, it's not just about hot flushes and, you know, mood swings. And obviously not every woman is going to get all these symptoms. You know, depending on your imbalances, you'll get different ones. But it shows us how many organs and tissues in the body are dependent on estrogen. They have estrogen receptors. And depending on whether your imbalance you do estrogen dominance or whether you do low estrogen, you will get different kinds of symptoms. So that's, you know, the physical challenge. And then there's the context of a woman's life, which Alison talked about a bit, that I think makes this whole thing more challenging, because between 40 and 55, you've got, you know, if you've got kids, you may be dealing with the challenge of teenagers, or you may have an empty nest, which in itself is extremely challenging for someone, especially if they're women who've dedicated their whole life to being a mother. When the children leave, can be a big identity crisis. And then, as Alison mentioned, you know, most of us around this age will have aging, sick or dying parents. And it still often seems to happen that it's the women in the family that end up being the carers, I'm afraid to say. And then, of course, for those of us that work, there's work stress as well. And you know, for women at this age, what I've observed is if they're corporate women, then they're coming up to the upper levels of senior management. And my belief is that one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons there are so few women on boards is to do with menopause. Because at the moment where they're about to step up to that upper level, they get hit sideways by menopause. And, you know, the statistics show it. They either leave, they go part-time, or they go sideways into a less demanding role. So, you know, that's a real challenge in itself. Or they may be women who've then left the corporate world and decided to run their own business, and that has its own set of stresses. And any stress at this time is going to make your symptoms worse. And then, of course, we have the whole taboo thing to deal with. So I think this has obviously got a lot better over the last, you know, 50 years. And certainly for menopause, the taboo around menopause, I think, is starting to loosen over the last 5 or 10 years. And I personally think that's because our generation is going, I'm sorry, but I am not going to put up and shut up like my mother or my grandmother. I want to talk about this, and I want to be able to do something about it rather than suffer in silence. But that said, that taboo is still there. You know, if you look at the studies of menopause in the workplace, a large percentage of women, it differs from study to study, between 50 and 90% are saying that they cannot talk to their manager and they cannot talk to their colleagues because they're terrified that it is going to jeopardize their career. And so they struggle on and then find that they can't struggle anymore and move sideways often. And then underlying the whole of that is this societal thing that we have in the West here, which is we live in a culture that glorifies youth and beauty. So that's why for many women, they either don't want to know about it until they absolutely have to deal with it because they're getting symptoms. And I think this adds to the knowledge gap that so many women have, especially women in their 40s, about perimenopause. And so also for a lot of women, especially for those who have a lot of their identity has been tied up with their value being around their youth and beauty, then that's another reason for an identity crisis in a woman at this age. So then that's the bad news. Let's talk about the good stuff. I personally think that menopause is a chance for positive transformation, and that's where the hidden gift lies. I've done some qualitative research of my own, and of course I treat a lot of women and see them pass through it, and almost without exception, all the women that I have talked to who are done and dusted with menopause say something like this: this is the best time of my life, I've never been so happy and fulfilled. And in certain cultures, they're not like us. They don't have this, oh, don't, you know, I can't face it and it's horrible. In Japan, they talk about it as a second spring. And I think this is in recognition of the fact that this is a time when women who've had children are starting to lift their head from the intensity of looking after younger children, or maybe their children have left altogether, and they're able to think about some form of reinvention. You know, what is it that I want now, because I've been dedicating myself to kids for so long. And I think in there, you know, that lies a really exciting opportunity for women. In the Native American culture, they talk about the fact that the blood that you no longer shed on a monthly basis is retained as wise blood. And I do think this is an age and a stage where women have become a lot wiser and start to own their wisdom, and they start to worry less about what others think. And I don't know how true this is, but I've been told that estrogen makes you compliant. Now, and of course, if your estrogen level is dropping, you're going to be less compliant and then less worry less about what others think. And I was thinking about that yesterday and thinking, well, I guess it's important that estrogen makes you compliant, because if you have got kids, you know, you don't want a mother of a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old going, oh God, can't be doing with this, I'm often doing something else. You know, you need something that's going to keep you with the kids, right? Apart from, of course, the mother love that probably isn't so much to do with estrogen. So the way I talk about menopause with my clients is I talk about it being the great teacher, and that it's the time when you are called to address the cracks. So what I mean by addressing the cracks is, I use the metaphor that we're like a house, and over the years, cracks have opened up in the walls, as they do in a house. Now, those cracks are a metaphor for maybe their physical cracks, like their physical weaknesses or predispositions you have. So for mine, I have a digestive weakness. Or maybe it's an emotional weakness. Maybe you've got very good boundaries. You're not good at saying no to people, or you're in a difficult partnership, or, you know, you're not enjoying your job. And so what happens when menopause comes along is that it's like the hormone shift is like the ground shifting under your house, such that all those cracks that you've papered over the years, probably many times, they burst open and you can't ignore them any longer. So that, in a sense, makes it a real opportunity for transformation. And I use this metaphor here, and I know that it's rather overused metaphor for menopause, but I like it. I think it really fits, because I do think that menopause is the equivalent to being in a chrysalis. Because what happens actually in a real chrysalis, rather than a metaphorical one, is that the body of the caterpillar completely liquefies into its constituent cells and then reforms itself into a butterfly. And I think in that sense, that is kind of what is happening for women during menopause. It's like a rebirth of ourselves, because often for most of us leading up to this phase, we are, a lot of our behavior and the way we are is dictated by things that happened in childhood. And children, they adapt to survive. So if the parents didn't like a certain way that you were or what you did, then, you know, you heard about it. And of course, then the child adapts, because they need to do that to survive, because they need to make sure still got their parents' love and they still get fed and don't get chucked out. That's, I mean, they don't know about parental love at that stage, but that's what it feels like as a kid. And so we create these compensatory, or what's called survival personalities, that when the chrysalis or the menopause phase comes along, it's an opportunity to reevaluate and to retrieve the true self, which is really the butterfly. So that doesn't mean, though, that it's not painful, you know. But that said, you know, have you ever heard of a woman who gave birth saying that labor was the worst thing that ever happened to her, and she completely and utterly regretted it? No, she knew it was a painful thing she had to go through to get an amazing thing out the other end. And I think it's the same with menopause. You know, I think we're rebirthing ourselves. Okay, I've gone on about that for long enough. So throughout this talk, I want to share some client stories. I have anonymized them all, so there aren't any kind of identifying details, and I've changed the names and their stock photos. So I want to talk to you about a client who I'm calling Zara. When she came to me, she was perimenopausal. She was in her mid-40s, and her period, her whole experience around her period had got much, much worse. So before her period, she was getting intense headaches, very sore breasts, lots of exhaustion and uncontrollable anger that was coming out, leaking out into her marriage, with her children, and even with her employees, because she ran her own business. And more generally, she was suffering from insomnia. So she would be woken in the night with palpitations. She had a lot of hot flushes, and she would have inexplicably low moods. Particularly, she would say when she woke in the morning, sometimes she would just feel really low and think, what's the point? And find herself crying for no reason. And after, I think, 5 months of treatment, all that had gone. So no PMS, no mood issues, sleeps well, and no headaches. So then I want to talk briefly about the natural approach to menopause, and that there can be a hard way to do it, which is a way that I hear about quite often. And what it involves is that the woman concerned thinks, right, I need to do something about these symptoms. I don't want to do hormones. So I'm going to Google natural solutions to menopause. And what comes up in a web search like that are things like black cohosh, red clover, soya, evening primrose oil. So there are some issues with these. And the first one is that natural is not harmless. I think it's often a common misconception that if it's natural, you can take as much as you like of it and you can self-prescribe and it won't do you any harm. But you know, red clover, for instance, it can cause upset stomachs, it can cause muscle pain, it can cause swollen feet. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about how you don't get side effects with homeopathy, because red clover is not homeopathy, by the way, and I'll explain why later. Because often people think that things like red clover and black cohosh are homeopathy, but they're not. But the thing is that I'm not saying that you shouldn't use herbs like red clover and black cohosh, but I would say if you want to go the herbal route, go to a professional herbalist, because you wouldn't self-prescribe HRT. It's the same that you shouldn't really prescribe things like red clover and black cohosh. And then when it comes to soya, you know, many of us have heard about the benefits of soya in terms of providing plant estrogens, or phytoestrogens as they're called. But there is an issue with soya in that it can contribute to osteoporosis because it prevents the absorption of vital minerals. The second reason is that these natural substances, they can exacerbate symptoms, and the issue is that every woman's menopause needs are different. And when you're going into natural medicine, it's not like conventional medicine, in that conventional medicine tends to go, okay, let's work out what the diagnosis is, the diagnostic label, and then there are one or two medicines for that. But it's very different in natural medicine. So you can get it wrong. And, you know, for some people, they say, oh, I tried black cohosh and I tried red clover, and it didn't work, you know, so that's something about kind of the difficult way to approach menopause naturally. Can I just ask everybody to mute themselves, because I'm hearing kind of tapping and bells, and if everybody could just mute themselves. It's on the bottom left, on the panel at the bottom. Okay, so meet Isla. When Isla came to me, she was, clinically speaking, she was postmenopausal. It had been 13 months since she'd had a period. But she was still getting a lot of symptoms, which is very common. And what she was finding is that she was really easily overwhelmed and getting anxious, and had a very short fuse. She was tearful for no apparent reason, a lot of hot flushes, vaginal dryness, which has been mentioned this evening, and a lot of headaches. And after 6 months treatment, all that has been cleared. So mood is fine, less overwhelmed, no vaginal dryness, no headaches, and no kind of short fuse. Okay, so then you may be thinking, well, if homeopathy is not red clover and black cohosh, what is it? So I'm going to explain. So the first thing to say about homeopathy is it's the second most popular system of medicine in the world. And the way that it's really different is that, and from mainstream medicine, or even from herbal medicine or Chinese herbs, is that it stimulates your innate self-healing mechanism with microdoses or nanodoses of natural substances. So it's the same basic principle as vaccination. So it's not the homeopathic pill that is actually doing the healing, it's stimulating your system to do the healing. So the beauty of that is that you don't get any side effects because your system's doing the healing. It's not a chemical, be it a plant chemical or whatever. So it's natural, it's non-toxic, it's very gentle, and it's very effective. And it can be used to treat all sorts of things, from physical, mental, and emotional. Some people know, for instance, arnica for bruising and trauma. That's how some people know homeopathy. But it has probably about 4,000 different medicines in its materia medica, and they can be used for everything from minor complaints like colds, coughs, flus, occasional cystitis, to much more serious things like anxiety, hot flushes, eczema, things like that. So again, it can treat acute stuff, chronic stuff, viral or bacterial. And it is supported by gold standard scientific evidence, contrary to what you might read in the media, because they keep repeating this thing about there is no evidence for homeopathy, and it just isn't true. The trouble is, when you repeat a lie enough, it starts to become a truth. And I'm going to share some studies with you later that have been done into homeopathy for menopause symptoms. And the last thing I want to say about it, kind of in an overview, is that it can be taken alongside conventional medicine because it's working on a completely different level. It's not a biochemical medicine, it's an energetic medicine. So it's very common for women or men, but mostly women, to come to me. They may be on antidepressants, anxiety medication, they might be on sleeping pills, or they may be on HRT, and they come to me because either they're getting side effects from those things and they want to get off them, or they just want to go more natural, which is what Livia mentioned for herself earlier. And so the beauty of homeopathy is that I can run the homeopathic medicines alongside the conventional medicine, and then as the person starts to feel better, then they go to their doctor who prescribed that conventional medicine and say they have a conversation about how they can wean themselves off. So then I want to talk about what homeopaths see as the 4 causes of illness briefly. The first one is what we call the soil or inherited factors. And it's not just what mainstream doctors would talk about in terms of DNA, the BRCA gene for breast cancer and that kind of thing. It's epigenetic factors as well. So, for instance, if there is a trauma in the ancestral line, emotional trauma can come down many generations and still affect descendants later, even though they never had that trauma themselves. And then the other inherited factor that we look at within homeopathy is that certain diseases in the ancestral line affect the physical and emotional makeup of descendants. And the one that's relevant here for menopause is if you're someone who has always had hormonal issues, then it may be probable that you have an ancestor, maybe beyond family memory, who's had gonorrhea. So gonorrhea can have that effect in that it can create hormonal imbalance in descendants. So that's the soil we'll look at. And then we look at what we call the constitution. So the constitution is the physical and hormonal and emotional makeup that you're born with. So everybody has a different constitution, and each constitution has its own strengths and weaknesses. So, you probably heard people say, oh, she's got a weak chest, or she has a delicate digestion. That's me. That was kind of inherent in my constitution. And so homeopathically, we can work with the constitution to strengthen those weaknesses. The third cause then is the very obvious but really, really important one, which is lifestyle. So lifestyle can cause so many illnesses. And, I think lifestyle, if everybody had the perfect lifestyle, we wouldn't you know, that we could probably cut the NHS services in half, frankly, because if you're not looking after your sleep, your hydration, your exercise and your diet, then, you know, you've got a problem. And certainly for a homeopath, we have to make sure that the lifestyle isn't too damaging, because if the lifestyle is bad, it works against the action of the medicines we give. And then the last one, but by no means least, is that when you see a homeopath, they will always be looking for what is the trigger for your illness. Is it a mental, emotional trigger? Was it a shock or a loss or a betrayal? And I'll talk more about that in a minute, because I'm going to talk more about the mind-body connection. Or there can also be physical triggers. So sometimes I see people who've never been well since they took a particular drug, be it recreational or medical, or they've never been well since they had a particular head injury. So they've never re-established balance. So those are the things that we'll look for as the different levels of causes. So then I'm going to say a bit more about the different principles that we work with, the way we think about health and disease. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about Lucy. So Lucy, when she came to me, she was also in perimenopause, early 40s. And she had a different set of symptoms to the ones I've talked about in previous cases. She found that about a week to 10 days before her period, she would get a super low mood. She will feel worthless, and she'd also get uncontrollably angry, which sometimes came out on her kids. And she felt really terrible about that. And she just was in such a bad space. Sometimes, you know, she'd even have suicidal thoughts. Now, she doesn't even notice her period after homeopathic treatment. I'm very pleased for her. So then I was going to talk about the mind-body connection. So your body is your subconscious mind. Our physical body can be changed by the emotions we experience. And this quote comes from quite a famous researcher called Dr. Candace Pert. And she was a pioneer in, I'm going to try and pronounce this without hesitating, psychoendoneuroimmunology. That's such a mouthful, but basically that is the science of the link between mind and body. So there are many studies that recognize this link, and one of those studies has found that loneliness, for instance, has the same impact on mortality as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So that actually makes it more dangerous than obesity. And another study shows that losing a loved one can double a person's risk of dying of a heart attack or a stroke for a month after that death. And as a homeopath, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for these hidden triggers of illness. And this is just a snapshot of some of the things that can cause illness. Now, it doesn't mean that if you've experienced any of these emotions that you're automatically going to get sick. The point is that if one of these emotions, you weren't able to recover from it and it put your system so off balance, then at that point, it can then cause physical or emotional illness. So we're always looking, a homeopath will always ask you what was happening around the time that you first started getting these symptoms. And, you know, one example is, for instance, a woman who came to me, 58, about 4 years postmenopausal, but really bad symptoms, weight gain, exhaustion, palpitations, anxiety. And I asked her this question, what was happening for you around the time you started getting these symptoms? And I was kind of thinking, I don't really need to ask this question, but I have to because, you know, it's important. But I thought she was just going to say, oh, well, you know, it started when my menopause started, but she didn't say that. She said, these symptoms started in a milder form 30 years ago when I lost my husband. So she never recovered from the grief of losing her husband. So I gave her a remedy, a homeopathic medicine for unresolved grief, a homeopathic medicine that also is a big menopause remedy. So that for me was a very, you know, interesting experience. And I'm really glad that I did ask her that question. Okay, so then the other thing to say about homeopathy is that it is a 100% tailored treatment. So it's not, as I think I said earlier, you know, it's not the matter of ticking the diagnostic box and then picking from one or two medicines. Homeopathy really is about treating the person, not the disease. The disease label is kind of interesting, but not that interesting, because I'm interested in not the label, but how you experience your symptoms. So, for instance, say you come with hot flushes, I'm going to want to know what time of day do you get those flushes? Is it triggered by anything in particular? Like, how do you experience them? So some women, they get them all up in their head and in their chest. Other women's, they get it on their back. Others, they will get them around the groin area. All those different presentations require a different medicine. And some people get them, like I used to get hot flushes with nausea. That's one remedy, which is different from hot flushes with weakness. So you see, and then you want to know about the person's personality, their emotional history, all that will inform the choice of remedy. So then how is it that this remedy, this homeopathic medicine stuff works? So as I said earlier, it stimulates your innate self-healing mechanism. We have this amazing self-healing mechanism renewal mechanism that is constantly working for us to keep us in balance. So we rely on, we can operate healthily within a narrow band, which we call homeostasis. And so when we have something that throws us off with that homeostasis, that's when we start to get symptoms. So homeopathy is about stimulating the innate self-healing mechanism to find that balance again. And it is done by using a nanodose of the substance that, if you overdosed on that substance, it would mimic your symptoms. So I know that's kind of quite a complicated concept. So I'm gonna give you examples. So take onions. When you chop onions, most people tend to get burning, watery eyes. You also some people get head colds with burning, watery eyes, and some people experience hay fever symptoms with burning, watery eyes. So for those people that experience head colds and hay fever like that, we give them a homeopathic dose of onion. That means it's in nanodose with homeopathic preparation. So we do something called succussion with it, which I won't go into detail of it now. But the role of that remedy is to give you something that will just very mildly and energetically mimic the symptoms you've got to wake up the self-healing mechanism so that it will sort it out for you. And in science, this is explicable or explainable in science, and it's called the hormetic process. And hormesis is the science of how very high doses of something harmful can be harmful, but low doses of that harmful thing can be beneficial. So radiation is one of those things. And when they initially discovered the whole thing around radiation, it was a health cure. It was, now we know that in large doses it can really harm you. And homeopaths use a lot of poisons and snake venoms, but they're in nanodose. So they're so small that it's really going in at the energy level and just reminding the system what to heal. Okay, so Janet came to me many years post-menopause, and she said that she'd had vaginal dryness for some years, but it got much worse since menopause, and she experienced it as intense burning during intercourse, and she had tried the mainstream solution of estradiol vaginal tablets that didn't work for her. So she came to me, and actually, amazingly, she was better in 2 months. So she took 2 months of a particular remedy that I prescribed, individualized for her, and she was sorted. Okay, so I'm almost done, and I realize I'm slightly running over, so I will hurry up. So quickly, the scientific evidence. So there's one study that was done into menopausal depression, where a randomized control study where they split the group into 3. They gave one group homeopathy, one group an antidepressant, one group a placebo. Nobody knew what they were getting. And what they found was that homeopathy and the antidepressant significantly improved the depression. But what homeopathy did that the fluoxetine, the antidepressant, didn't, is it also improved the other menopausal symptoms. And then there was an observational study done of 430 women across 8 countries who were treated with homeopathy for menopausal hot flushes. And 99% reported disappearance or lessening of symptoms. And these changes took place mostly within 15 days of starting treatment. So lastly, Catherine, for her period, she the first thing she said to me, she said, "I'm Sarah, I'm basically losing a good week every month to either horrible PMS or a really difficult period." So she was getting brain fog, she was tearful with, inexplicably, lots of headaches, then a very difficult, painful and exhausting period. It was interfering with her work and her family life. And after 6 months, she had none of that. It's all gone. So she's got 7 days back of her life in each month. So lastly, just to say, there are 3 ways to work with me, and I've mentioned one of them already, which is my Natural Menopause Transformation Program. If you want to do something more simple than that, then you can see me as a homeopath and a coach. And I also work as a corporate speaker and trainer. So if anybody's in a corporation where they think there needs to be more awareness around menopause, then I'm very happy to come in and do a talk. And the last thing to say is that I have an offer, and I think Allie will send this to you, but I'm very happy to do a free menopause assessment call with anybody who would like it. It's 45 minutes. And if you want to just take the insights and go and do your own thing with them, that's absolutely fine. And if you want to explore how homeopathy might help you, that I'm happy to explore that with you too. That is me. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I just want to
stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, that would be great. Fabulous. Okay, so we got some great insights there. Absolutely loved it. So thank you so much, Sarah. I found that really interesting. I really don't know that much about homeopathy, though I remember taking the kids to a homeopath years ago when they were very little. Things like my son had a really bad bowel issue with keeping the his poo inside him. I mean, it was really painful, but the homeopath was amazing, more than the doctors could help. So yes, I do have a belief down there as well.
And you're not uncommon, Livia, in not really understanding what homeopathy is. Most people think it's herbs and supplements and diet, and it's a very specific, discrete form of medicine.
Yeah, it was just so interesting. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So really, I'm here to chat about lifestyle changes and embracing this goddess time of our lives. And we do experience so many changes as we go through that process of hormone imbalance. And each and every one of us is just so individual, which actually makes it more complicated in trying to work out the best solution. But yes, it really is about a lifestyle change, not all about it. And of course, medication comes into this, homeopathy comes into this, herbal remedies, whatever your direction that you choose. But lifestyle factors have an integral part. They are so, so vital. The UK suffers from obesity. You can see what Parliament are doing at the moment. They're trying to reduce the BMI of the general population. Now, this is because obesity can at times make the menopause a lot worse. Yeah. So from our point of view and what we're talking about today, lowering our BMI may in some cases help our menopause. So let's just reconnect with our body at this time. Let's reconnect with our minds as well and take this time out and take a step back. And as Sarah mentioned, you know, we do live in a world that's very body orientated. I mean, Instagram, to be honest with you, I use it a lot, but sometimes the images that flash before us are all about the perfect lifestyle, the perfect body. And it can be a real confidence knocker. So it's really about, I think, having a community of women. We're all in midlife, we're all in this together, and supporting each other through it and educating each other. So, I mean, I learned so much from Alison, I learned from Sally, I learned a lot from Sarah today. So even though we're experts in our own field, there is always so much to learn. So as far as exercise goes, well, this is my baby, this is my love, I'm very passionate about it. So what does it do? It's going to increase your endorphins. It's going to make you feel more positive. And the key here really at menopause is to take that look of the exercise that you have been doing. And just maybe some of you are becoming frustrated because the things that you did when you were younger that had that really positive effect on your body just isn't working. That bit of extra fat around the middle, or maybe the upper arm, maybe your thighs, your bottom, or even on the hips, depending on your body type and your genetic, where it used to disappear is just kind of, it's just hanging around. And it can become quite frustrating to get rid of it. What do I do? Do I diet? Do I follow an exercise program? Okay, I'm going to Google it. Oh my goodness, there is a wealth of information. It's flashing at you, this plan, this one. So your body is individual, and it's so important to have something that works for you. And it really is trial and error, which is frustrating because it takes time. But once you find that key to exercising that works for your body, and a food pattern that works for your lifestyle, for your job, you know, around the kids and around the family, with foods that are generally whole food nutrition, and whether that includes things like smoothies, or whether you're not a smoothie person, whether, I know some clients have come to me and say, oh, I really like soups, or I really don't like a lot of carbohydrates, they make me feel bloated. So you're going to work out, you have to work out which foods really suit your body. So bearing that in mind, let's touch on the exercise, because food can be a whole different field. But tonight I really want to focus on exercise and how we can really reduce what's called oxidative stress. So, as I said, what worked in your 20s and 30s may not work in your 40s and your 50s. And one of the reasons why is that your body tends to release oxidative stress at high intensity. So oxidative stress is really an imbalance between free radicals and antioxidants in your body. The free radicals are oxygen-containing molecules, and they have an uneven number of electrons, and it gets really complicated, but the basis of it is the uneven number allows them to easily react with other molecules, okay? And in menopause, this is all thrown out of balance. It's very easy to hit oxidative stress if you take the intensity up in exercise too high. So for example, if you are a reasonable beginner at exercise, you haven't done much before, and you think, well, Mary down the road started to do this class, and she lost loads of weight, and I would really like to do the same thing. So you do what Mary does, and your body doesn't shift, you don't lose anything, and you think, well, why is it working for Mary and not for me? Your body type is different, your hormone balance is different. You know, HRT may work for Mary, but another medication would work for you. And the same goes with exercise. So the most important thing is to make sure you don't create oxidative stress. And the modes of training you can use, I mean, my love is resistance training. I'm a big believer of that. I'm very pro resistance training, and the clients I work with tend to use that as their main focus. Now, resistance training, when you think, oh, weight training, resistance training, was that big muscles? Oh, I don't think I like that look. Well, it doesn't mean that. It just means using things like bands at home. And because of lockdown, we've learned a lot about our bodies. So I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. These are so effective. They don't overload the muscles. They don't overload the joints. What they do is stimulate the muscle filaments to actually contract, and you are going to burn more fat if you use resistance training consistently over time. Because we can't overload the muscle excessively when we work in a home environment, it means that not only is it safe, but also you can do it a little more frequently. And because you're doing it at home, guess what? You have more time, because you're not driving to the gym, getting changed, doing the workout, having a chat, maybe having a coffee, then have a shower. By the time you've done that, it's 2.5 hours. Now, because of lockdown, it's taught us that we can do things more effectively. And to do things more effectively means doing more of it, but for a lesser period of time, so it fits in with our busy lifestyles. We're still busy, whether we're working in London or whether we're in lockdown. Everybody is always busy. So resistance training is number one. And actually, I'm going to let you into the secret. In lockdown, I use these as dumbbells. Yeah, even though I'm a fitness trainer, I didn't really have equipment at home because I used to work out in the gym. This has been so effective. I mean, this is Heinz chicken soup. I'll never eat it, but we had some stock in the cupboards. So you can use your surroundings. And during lockdown, we were using broomstick handles with bags of pasta on the end. One of my clients put some shopping bags together with some potatoes and some tin cans inside, and she was using it as a barbell. It was quite an interesting scenario. But what we found was, because everybody was doing consistent exercise, so we were doing 20 minutes to half an hour, 5 times a week of consistent resistance training, their lean body mass, so that's your muscle tissue, was sustained or increased slightly. Therefore, their body fat decreased, and they started to feel more confident. They started to drop weight without actually trying that hard, but having that consistency of exercise. So what we tend to do is we do a resistance training program, and then we split the cardio. So low intensity cardio, or sometimes HIIT as well. There's a little bit about HIIT, I'll tell you in a minute. So low intensity cardio is a really effective way to keep your body in great shape. Now that means not taking your heart rate up too high. So just be aware here, your lowest heart rate for fat burning may be very different from your friends. So we are individuals, and you have to work out your own intensity. So some women may have a higher threshold than others, for exercise. For example, someone that's run for years and years and years may hit their limitations at a higher heart rate, and therefore not induce oxidative stress when they go out for a run. But if your body tends to produce more cortisol because it becomes stressed during exercise, then you need to take the intensity down. So the intensity could be, if you did a class, for example, you know how you feel really puffy and you get flushed and your heart rate's going like this. Well, it could be that your body is signaling under stress to release cortisol. It's very, very individual. HIIT training less than 20 minutes tends to be more effective for a menopausal woman. If you go over 20 minutes, we are prone to release oxidative stress as we get older, not when we're so young. So at this point, it would be well worth having some kind of electrolyte drink. So electrolyte drinks are very effective. They usually contain potassium, they have sodium, magnesium, and calcium, which help combat, again, dehydration. I remember earlier we were talking about the importance of making sure you stay hydrated for your body, because it has a positive effect on all aspects of the body. The electrolyte drink also will help you, will stop you from muscle cramping, and it also delays fatigue, and fatigue is one of those symptoms as well that we really want to avoid. So most definitely, my top tip, resistance training. If you're going to do cardio, split it from your resistance training to get optimal results. You could do your weight training in the morning, and then in the afternoon you could do your cardio, whether it's a walk with dog, whether it's a walk out in nature, or you're taking the kids out. You know, it doesn't have to be specific. Oh, I've got to just focus on going out by myself. You can integrate it into your day, and this is again a thing about lifestyle. HIIT training, limit it to 20 minutes, so you could run up a flight of stairs and down again. I usually get my ladies to do 10 minutes because it's really effective and it doesn't take time, which means they're more likely to stick at it. If you stick at something consistently, you're going to get more results. Weight training, again, really effective at burning fat. I'm a big advocate of yoga, Pilates, mindfulness as well. Again, going back to stress, relaxing in our later lives, taking that time out. Now, whether you do that through having a nice Epsom salt bath, whether you get that from exercise, such as yoga, stretch classes are also really good because you're breathing into your body and you're learning to feel your body more and taking that, again, that step back. So I find that really helpful. I'm going to show you a few exercises that I use, but mostly it's about a mind to muscle connection when you train and when you lift a weight, or in this case it's going to be one of these. The mind to muscle connection is massive. So if you, for example, if you know about athletes that you've heard of, they visualize, and when they visualize, not only do they think of running their race or whatever their sport is, when they train, they see the muscle. They know the structure of the body. If you know the structure of the body, and I'm always on my Facebook Lives getting my big muscle charts out, and I say, well, today we're training this part over here. And it's so important to tell everybody why you're doing the exercise, what the muscle is doing, how it will shape your body, and the reason why we do it in a certain way. For example, let me just show you this one. So The bicep muscle, it's an easy one to concentrate on. It's a movement that we're all used to. So after you've warmed up, for example, you would stand, not over gripping the dumbbell or whatever you have in your hand. It could be a broomstick. The idea is if you squeeze the inside arm against the body, you retract the shoulders back and you lift the chest up. So posture is so important when you train. I always say to my ladies, imagine you're a dancer and you're walking out on stage. You want to lift as if there's a piece of string lifting you up through the top of the head. You keep your shoulders back, chest up, stomach in. And when I say stomach in, it's almost as if you can visualize your belly button coming in towards your spine. Yeah. And with your lower back, whereas Pilates and ballet, you tuck underneath, there's a slight neutral position with the spine whenever you weight train, and you always bend your knees. By bending your knees, you take the pressure off the lower back more so. So when you would do a bicep curl, I would never start somebody with a straight arm. It would always be a slight bend in the arm, purely because you don't know their range of movement. They might be hypermobile through the joint. And remember, if you've got a weight on the end of a lever, it's going to pull more on the joint here. So always keep the arms slightly bent. And this goes for most exercises except your triceps, okay? So squeeze your triceps, is the back of the arm, by the way. Squeeze the arm against the body. Keep the elbow nice and tight. Rotate the shoulders back. So in the gym, you may see a lot of people going up like this for a bicep. You want to bring the bicep curl exercise in towards the midline of the body. You count for 3 or 4 exercises, 3 or 4 counts on the way down, not hyperextending the joints. So we're not locking it out, it's just to here. When you curl up, you keep the elbow against the waist. This is really important. And you come halfway up. So you're just above your boobs, all right? And then you go 3/4 of the way down. So you look forward, you squeeze up, you hold at the top of the range of movement without over gripping the dumbbell or the bar or the tin can, and then you release down slowly. Now the reason why we release down slowly is that, again, the limb is under a force. So you have the force is here. You release for 4 to 5 counts. So it is semi-straight. Physically, in your mind, squeeze your arm against the body. Now, the more, you can close your eyes and do this. So you breathe out on the way up, in on the way down, and release slowly. Now, with hardly any weight, I can feel my bicep contracting, and it's quite tight. So the more you squeeze in towards the waist, the more you visualize the shape of the bicep, the more it actually works for you. So make sure the arms are actually directly out in front of you, not extended to the side. And when the bicep curls up, keep the elbow right against the waist. What you'll usually find in gyms is this will happen. So there'll be a lot of swinging. And when that happens, momentum takes over and you're not actually working the muscle. So it's so important to understand how to activate your muscles. And ladies, that goes for every muscle of the body. If you can understand, even know the shape of the muscle, to know the posture, so the shoulders back, the tummy in, the chest out, and really pull your abdominal muscles in towards the spine. These are stabilizing core muscles. We use them a lot, literally just to stand up. But to actually catch yourself in the mirror, oh, right, I need to pull my tummy in. Okay, I've got to stay lifted. And when you walk past the mirror in your hallway, think about lifting. Think about pulling the muscles in and lifting up. Because posturally, because of bosoms and stooping over computers, we tend to go like this in later life. But if we can now correct that by knowing that we have to lift up, keeping our shoulders back and lifting our chin slightly upwards so it's parallel to the floor, in the long run, over a period of time, you'll have a better posture. And I'm a real big believer that, weight training, it's not just about developing the muscle, it's about your overall health and well-being and posture. And if you use your weights in conjunction with a food plan or a way of eating that really suits you, but that's another story, and then you can have the results that you want. And it's not overnight. It will take weeks. It will take months, but you will absolutely get there. So again, that's visualizing where you want to get to. So I hope that was helpful and you could take away something with you. Do ask me any questions you like. I'm really happy to open this up for now.
Right. So I've got the questions from the audience. So Sarah, if you'd like to answer yourself. This is basically for everybody to ask questions. So I'll answer that in a moment, Claire. Renata couldn't come on the call. She's watching the replay, and she was asking, can you get symptoms of perimenopause at 45 or symptoms of menopause at 45? And of course, all of us know that that's the case, because most people get those pre-menopause symptoms between the age of 45 and 50. And you can certainly get a lot of symptoms. And this is the problem, and this is what I'm passionate about, and I think the others in the Menopause Experts Club as well, is the fact that because we get these symptoms in our 40s, and they may present as anxiety or insomnia, not as hot flushes. Nobody realizes, including the GPs, including the doctors, people don't realize it's menopause that's the problem. And that's what we are passionate, and that's why we're doing the Let's Talk Menopause, isn't it, Livia?
They get put on antidepressants.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, I've seen women where it starts younger than that. You know, I think women in their early 30s need to be taught about this stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. Don't get taught it at home.
Yeah. And my burnout was at the age of 38, so.
Yeah, mine was 42, so.
Yeah. And this impacts, as you've touched on, it impacts so much on senior management. And my question to you was, what can companies do to prevent this important loss of skilled workforce as we lose our female senior managers and end up with this even greater imbalance at the CEO level than in other areas? And I see that you do some corporate work, Sarah.
Yeah. Yes. So your question is, what can they do about it?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing is about awareness. You know, it's about educating women, and it's not just about the women, it's about the managers, and it's about HR understanding that this is a phenomenon, you know, that you can see burnout in perimenopause. And the biggest thing that is confusing for women, why they don't think it's anything to do with menopause, because they still have a regular period. So it's just, they think it's just stress, and then you see women go off with burnout and stress. So it's education and awareness at all levels, and then I think it's offering women, you know, ways that they can help themselves, and also thinking about the environment that women work in. You know, can they have flexible working hours? Because if you've had like 2 hours sleep because you've got menopausal insomnia, then you don't really want to have to be in at work at 8 o'clock because you work in a bank, or 7 o'clock even. So it's about the employer being flexible and supporting the women and understanding that this isn't just a thing that can last a couple of months. You know, the average length of menopause is 4 years, and personally, I've been doing it for 10. So
and some women carry on having menopause symptoms into their 90s.
Yes. So, you know, it's not just a thing that is like, oh, it's done and dusted when she's, you know, when she's been pregnant and had the baby, and then she'll be back to normal. It's not like that. It needs to be taken into account as a fact of working life that is going to affect the productivity of women and the profitability of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. The next point was Sally saying, yes, this thing about handling it all. We're expected to handle it all, especially as women. We are used to multitasking. It's not good for us, actually, to be multitasking. Livia was saying about the social pressure, and you were mentioning about the youth and beauty culture that we have now. I think what has been really healthy is the way some really popular actors have aged and are still acting and are still being icons. So to see Helen Mirren and Judi Dench and people like that, and Maggie Smith, still showing that you have value in your 70s has been amazing for our generation to see, because that was sort of invisible 30 years ago, I think. And Nikki asked, can you have homeopathy with HRT? Sarah?
Yeah. Yes, you can. You can. Yes. So you can run it alongside. And, you know, the only thing I have to know is that in order to prescribe the right medicine, what were the symptoms before you started the HRT? Because obviously the HRT would have masked some of the symptoms. Although I do know people who have come to me because they've been several years on HRT and it hasn't changed anything. So it's because it's so individual, the different hormonal imbalances that people have.
And Sarah, a lot of the benefits of bioidentical hormone therapy are in terms of the long-term impact of the menopause, so supporting osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. Can homeopathy help with that as well?
Yes, you can treat at what's called a kind of organ level by putting in calcium and magnesium. They're not supplements, but they're low dilution remedies to help with the bones and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and Sarah was saying about the bar class. So when Livia was speaking, Sarah was saying about a bar class and getting an adrenal crash because the bar class people don't put a ceiling on the amount of work or of exercise that people are taking.
Yeah, no, I mean that's I thought, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, I thought, I really need to get fit. I'm going to go and do a bar class. And the bar class approach is push, push, push. They say embrace the shake when your muscles are so tired that your legs are doing this. And they're like, yay. And I got to a point after a few weeks where I couldn't even do the basic movements because I was shaking. I'm almost passed out at one point and I went into adrenal crash. I've learned my lesson now.
Obviously.
Way.
It's the same with boot camp, isn't it? It's the same.
Yeah, that's why I love what you're doing, Livia, that you know, you understand that because the adrenals are really under stress in menopause. So you really, that tailoring exercise to an individual woman's needs is really important. Some women, they go through menopause and their adrenals are fine. They go out and they run marathons. I'm very jealous of them, but I can't do that. And I just have to accept.
I'm the same. I just get extremely fatigued very quickly, and I've had to adapt, and it was really hard because it's almost like you have that little voice saying, "Well, you're not good enough. You're not like you used to be."
Yeah.
And that's part of the meditation, learning to accept that you are midlife. You have to take it easy and forgive yourself and love yourself for where you are now.
Exactly. It brings lots of lessons with it.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure. And it was interesting, Livia, what you were saying about HIIT training and women benefiting much more from shorter amounts of HIIT training, definitely less than 20 minutes, and 10 minutes is fine. And certainly that's what I sort of teach, that we just need short amounts of exercise and much less intensity. That's great. And then Claire was asking about whether I use the Dutch test to assess the adrenals. And I use the Dutch test as it's a pivotal test that I use in my practice. It's the dried urine for comprehensive hormone test, and you just pee on a strip of blotting paper basically, and several times during a day, or if you're doing one for the whole cycle, you do it over the whole month as well. And that allows me to analyze not only your hormones, your sex hormones, so your testosterone, estrogens and progesterone, but also the way your sex hormones are metabolized, so I can tell whether you're putting yourself at higher risk of breast cancer by the way you're metabolizing those sex hormones. And I can help tweak the way the liver is working and support the liver in adjusting that detoxification. And then, as Claire says, it also is a really good way of looking at adrenal fatigue and the adrenal glands, because we also have a diurnal adrenal curve from that, and that helps to work out what's going on with adrenals and what to do to best support the adrenal glands at that stage as well. So yes, it's a pivotal test that I ideally repeat every year to see how people are doing with it. Right, and the other thing Claire was asking about what each of us were doing for self-healing of menopause. So for me, because I started on this journey when I was 38, I started the nutritional supplements, which are pivotal to my approach. High quality nutritional supplements, high quality diet. I make sure I have a salad every day, summer or winter. We need those raw vegetables as part of our diet because it's still got so much in the way of minerals and vitamins in. and meditation, mindfulness, everyday self-healing. So the energetic healing that I do for myself as well as for my clients. And I'm also on bioidentical hormone therapy myself, but I'm only needing a very minimal amount because I've really not suffered from hot flushes as yet. I'm 53 in a couple of weeks. So hot flushes haven't been a problem for me, but the brain fog and the anxiety remains something that I have to address on a daily basis with affirmations and mindfulness.
Shall I answer that question too?
Yeah.
So I see a homeopath monthly. I see a nutritionist every so often. Like I feel like I've got it down at the moment. You know, I keep the carbs low. I'm not very good with nutrition. I go in and out of it, you know, I have to confess. But I know what's good for me and what's not. And I support my thyroid because my thyroid's always been a bit subclinical low. So I take Lugol's iodine and a thyroid supplement and a good multivitamin mineral and a probiotic. And occasionally I will see an acupuncturist for specific things. I sometimes see an osteopath. So, but I've always done that. That's not specifically menopausal. So yeah, and my weakness, I think, is I know I need to do meditation. I'm so bad at getting myself to do that. And I'm not so great with the exercise. I do try to take myself out for a walk every day, but that is my weak area.
You need a dog.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the dog will help. Yes, it's puppy time for you, I think. I'll keep you busy. Yeah, well, for me, it's very much about meditation every morning, affirmations, because that puts me in the right headspace to deal with life in a positive way. Because if I'm helping other people, I need to be in a good space in order to do that. I'm a great believer in it, and it took me a long time. I've only really recently started to meditate in the last 3.5 years, and it's been a wonderful experience, I must say. Every day I find somebody new that inspires me, and that's the beauty of YouTube and also Google, isn't it? You can find great speakers, great orators, and people like Joe Dispenza who change your state. Well, to be able to do that from the inside out. But I digress. The other thing is exercise. Yeah, consistently, literally low intensity every single day. But I do that with my teaching. I tend not to do my own training on top. But to be honest with you, our bodies don't really need that. But together with that, I am very, very onto the nutrition side of things. I'm a big believer. You are what you eat for your health. Supplementation, totally agree with Alison and also Sarah on that. Make sure it's for you. And make sure it suits your body, and know if you're feeling tired that maybe it's a sign that you need to take some kind of supplementation, you know. So yeah, they're the 3 things really.
Great. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we've spoken for nearly an hour and a half. So we've done really well. Well done, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who are watching the webinar, welcome. I'll just wait.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.